Welcome to the Internet Advisor, your place for technology news, interviews with industry experts, and answers to your computer questions since 1998. The door is always open at InternetAdvisor.net. But right now it's time to get you in touch with your team of tech experts on this year's edition of Internet Advisor.
This week on the Internet Advisor, Microsoft says two-factor authentication, yes. SMS messaging, no. We'll talk about more details on how to deal with that particular security feature. Google is finally bringing a good thing to an end. Free photo storage with Google is going to stop. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then one more thing from Microsoft for the third time this year, and it was a big one. We'll give you more details on that. We'll have that and Mike Brennan coming up on the Internet Advisor. Welcome back to the Internet Advisor. We're here every week with our podcast, with our Zoomcast, and you can catch those both on InternetAdvisor.net. You can also find it on Google and listen to it on SoundCloud. I would like to introduce our staff on the Internet Advisor, starting off with our original Internet Advisor. That would be Gary Baker, coming to us from sunny Southeast Florida. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Cal. Happy to be here.
And of course, we also have our resident, what I call tech expert, Mr. Ed Rudel, coming from the mountains of Oxford, right?
Ortonville, yeah, the flatlands of Oxford, okay. Nortonville.
Well, it's right one of those O's up north there. That's all I know. I can see it. You got the pot on the stove.
Yeah, you know, it takes a while for that pot to get going. Yeah, it takes about a good hour. I wish I'm going to have to invest in another wood burning stove. That just takes too long.
Yeah, maybe you should get a electric powered wood burning stove. You can just plug it in and get it going.
Yeah, that's LP gas or something. Yeah,
I might as well just get a Mr. Coffee. You know, there's nothing like percolated coffee in the morning. Yeah.
Well, getting up in the morning, you know, you start your day off, and my God, always when my day starts off, my phone ends up buzzing in one way or another, letting me know there's a message coming through. And Microsoft was looking at security on phones, and specifically things like two-factor authentication. And Ed came across a great article on it, speaking on how Microsoft's views of two-factor authentication should go. And Ed, I would like you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of a scary article. When you first read the headline, it basically said Microsoft urges users to stop using phone-based multi-factor authentication.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? You know, what the heck does that mean? I mean, we all, well, in the business world, and many of us use multi-factor authentication, but what they're referring to is SMS-based text messaging, right? So when you get that text message with that digit code that you type in, the 5 or 8 characters, because that's all in clear text and that could be intercepted. And the same thing with voicemail. So when you are prompted for, would you like to receive a callback with the numeric number? Those could theoretically also be intercepted, right?
Right.
If someone was determined enough to want to hack your Facebook or whatever you use multi-factor authentication for. So Microsoft's urging to stop using those. The good news is that you can continue using an authentication app on your phone, which requires digital certificates to be copied from your whatever platform you're on. And many of us have already done this. And what you do is you use like as an example, the Microsoft Authenticator on my Android phone, and there are others. Google Authenticator. What you do is when you go to the platform, you hold your phone camera up to the device and it puts one of those 2D barcodes on there that have the squares in the corner. You hold your phone over it. That's the authentication it lasts for 60 seconds. And then a token, a software token, a piece of software is placed on your phone, granting it that authentication. So that application now is authenticated to receive your multi-factor authentications from whatever platform you're trying to do. I look at my Microsoft Authenticator. I have 7 different certificates on there from different corporations. I've got Microsoft for Outlook. I've got my corporate one that I'm working at. I have the Facebook. I have Cumulus from WJR. I have so many of those on there. And I'm sure you're the same way, Gary.
Oh, sure. But you know what? We tell this to our listening audience, but how do they have the opportunity to create that setup when the site that they might go to uses SMS to authenticate, right?
Right.
So this is really something targeted at the developers. The site developers have to do it differently.
That's an excellent point. Yeah.
The other thing that they can do too is that whatever site that they're dealing with, let's say it's their banking site or their bill pay site or whatever it is, they can get in contact with those people as well and say, hey, listen, is it possible that you can change your authentication process from SMS to a registered authenticator instead, just to make things more secure? That's another way of getting that done. And then that way, when you put those apps on your phone, you'll be able to take advantage of them.
Well, another thing that you can do is that every 6 months or a year, we encourage users to go out to all these different sites and go to the security settings, your bank sites, your Facebook sites, and then go through, not only change your password, but you may have some new security policies that have taken place that have changed that you have to accept. And most of these companies, you'll notice they provide multiple forms of authentication, an email address, a private email address. And you can go into those settings and change them and possibly upgrade them to a biometric or an authentication app.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
Yeah, so many times we sign up for services and that sort of thing, and then you sign up once, you set a password, and you never ever think about doing things like changing the password, or unless they prompt you to do such or that sort of thing. And you don't know when there's other features that are available that you can take advantage of. So Ed makes a very good point. Go out and check your site every now and then. Look at the profile, find out if there's other security features that you can take advantage of to be able to protect the equipment that you're dealing with.
And you know what? I went to the Michigan unemployment site, and they need to update theirs. They don't provide that. They only provide the SMS. So I'll have to talk to Governor Whitmer about that. And maybe next week, and I'll give her a call. Not that she has other things to worry about right now.
Yeah, that's probably true. So this is not something new. This is something that we've all known for a long time. The site developers have known for a long time. They just didn't do it. And a lot of times what I'll do is, if I'm not on a secure connection, I'll go to my banking app on my phone, because it's actually more secure than going on my computer, because my computer then has to send, the SMS signal code over to me through SMS, and then I put it in. I just use my my face identification function on my phone, which is more secure.
So we'll just keep it at that particular point, and we'll stop with your face on the phone and come back and talk more about security and other things here on the Internet Advisor. Hey, every week you want to keep tuned in here for the Internet Advisor. We give you information about technology. We answer questions about technology, and the way you can get those questions answered is by going to internetadvisor.net. On our homepage, if you go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a Contact Us button. Click on that, and then you can submit your question on technology. Put in as much detail as possible. You can't give us too much. And then we'll go ahead, find that question on our site, answer it, and then send you back an answer. And if you want, you can also hear that answer right here on our podcast that we do every week as well. So make sure you go to internetadvisor.net, contact us, give us those questions, and we'll give you those answers. Continuing our conversation in regards to security, I found an article this week that I thought was absolutely a hoot in some ways. But there is a group over in Europe that they constantly scan the internet looking for databases that have vulnerabilities in them. And they usually will come across things like databases on plastic surgery. And they were able to, see a bunch of people who had plastic surgery because there was a database out there, that sort of thing, and it was unprotected. Well, let it be known that not only do the good, honest people in the world make mistakes and forget to secure databases, but the criminals out there also forget to secure their databases as well. And they came across a database of stolen Facebook passwords. And not only did it have a database of stolen Facebook passwords, but it talked about how they got those Facebook passwords, the process that they did, the whole shooting match. So they were able to get in contact with Facebook. They got the database closed down so it wasn't exposed to everybody. But Facebook had to go out and send to a bunch of people information about changing their passwords because they had been compromised. But yet the criminals who were going to use this compromised information completely forgot about securing it themselves. And it was out there for anyone to help themselves to and use. So
what a bunch of hacks.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. So yeah, so be careful with your own information, but remember, even criminals are stupid. I mean, are not very bright too. In the past week, I noticed an article on Mac Rumors, and after 1 year of being launched, Disney Plus has over 73.7 million subscribers.
Wow,
I found
isn't that amazing?
That's crazy numbers. Crazy.
You know,
Well,
when I read that,
you got to
Go
have a
ahead.
good brand. You got to have a good brand when, when something like that happens, right? People hear about it and they immediately want to go get that information. That's amazing.
oh, and plus they have the content too. I mean, they got all those Disney movies. I mean, we all have, VHSs and then DVDs and Blu-rays, and then we've purchased digital licenses to watch it on things like YouTube or Hulu or whatever. We buy the long term. How many times do we had the same Disney movie on multiple formats, and now we can get it through a streaming service. I was looking at the numbers, Cal, and so Disney, you said 73.7 million subscribers this week. I thought that number sounded familiar. Netflix has 73 million subscribers.
Holy cow. How long is and Netflix has been around what? Well, I guess we have to
Yeah.
count when they started the actual subscription service online, but
It goes
it's been
up and down.
years.
It's been
Right.
years, but I think Disney Plus also includes some ESPN channels, and they've been bundling things like that. Hulu's been bundling. Hulu has 35 million, right?
Yeah.
And then YouTube TV 3 million, which I was shocked at that it's so small. And those are just 4 examples of some streaming services out there. But I was surprised that so basically Disney just surpassed Hulu or Disney Plus in its subscriptions.
1 year.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and
Yep.
I think the key for Disney is they've got the content, but they've got the content of young people. And because they have that, and when I say young people, I'm talking about little bitty folks. Because they have that type of content, I bet you there's a bunch of parents out there that just said, you know something, I need electronic babysitter. I'll sign up for Disney Plus. Bam. Kids, sit down in front of the TV. I'm turning this thing on. Look at Ariel as many times you like. I don't care. Because, and especially with COVID-19, you're stuck in the house. It's like, oh my God, give me anything just to get these kids off of me. And I think that's part of what helped to accelerate that massive growth so fast.
Well, and there's not a lot of the new parents that are now out there, the younger parents, because all of us have children as well, do not have that library of VHS and DVDs that the younger
right.
kids do. They've only had streaming digital media like that, and so they have to continue their subscriptions.
And it's everything on that channel is family friendly, and again, it's the brand. I just got a notice from a new streaming service. It looks pretty good. It's called Fubo, Fubo TV, and I'm thinking, okay, should I do that? Should I look at Hulu? How about Netflix? Netflix doesn't have live TV. Oh, wait a minute, they're coming up with live TV because they're all
Oh.
trying to, they're all, well, we don't know when it's going to launch, but that's the rumor, right? So when you think about it, the first mover advantage, if you have something you're happy with, if you have Hulu, okay, maybe you'll get the Big Ten Network or something on Fubo. That might be enough for some people to change. You don't have to pay extra like you would on Hulu. But people, they get used to something. They've got their favorites that are set up. That first mover advantage is important. And you know, how do you know that that service is even going to stay in business? Disney, you don't have anything to worry about, right? Exactly what's there. They're going to be a big company. They're going to stay in business. The brand. Not hard to believe. I don't know how these other smaller services are going to take over and gain enough market share to stay in business.
Well, they're going to be absorbed, I would think, at some point.
Right.
And you bring up a very valuable point. And I know we're going a little bit long on this point, but there's a lot to talk about in this particular venue. Just like you said, FUBU just came out. I just saw advertised something called Philo, Philo. It's $20 a month. And then you got that. There are so many choices out there. And then what you have to do now is you start to look at it, and they're all starting to repeat the same content, only in different packages. And that drives me to the thing that I've always wanted, but just doesn't seem to come to fruition. And if I can figure out how to do it, I'd do it myself. And that is, there's got to be an aggregator out there. Someone who takes all these services, pull them into one umbrella, you pay a flat fee, and then you just go out and pick whatever you want. I want that a la carte so bad I could just taste it, because I hate the fact. Go ahead.
Well,
wasn't that called cable?
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to say, isn't that just called cable?
And there certainly are others that do that, right? Like, so one will pull in, like I said, the Big Ten network, right? That matters to a lot of us. Somebody else will pull in the entire sports package, right? Or you get the NFL, which, by the way, you can buy separately, or you can buy it through an aggregator, like a Hulu or a Fubo or something like that. So, the problem is there's so many choices. And do you take the service with 79 channels for $50, or do you want 180 channels for $75? And what do you get for, oh, well, this one has the Food Network on, this one only has weather.com on, or whatever. So it's hard to figure it out. There's a service down here that we can select, but it only has CNN, no Fox News on it. So if you want to flip back and forth and see what the other guys are saying, either way, you can't do that. There's another service that has Fox but doesn't have CNN. So you have to buy both services. Just amazing to me.
Now, see, but
Cal,
go ahead, Ed.
I was going to say, we've exhausted this one. What about this day in history? We got 30 seconds left.
Well, something, I was thinking about that, and let's just hold that till the next segment, because we are running a little bit short on this particular one. I'd like to talk about this day in history. We got a ton of things going on in that. I got a crap load of stuff to talk about with the Apple things that have happened in the past week. And we still have some more news articles from Ed. Matter of fact, we never even touched on the Google situation. We need to talk about that as well.
Definitely.
So we're going to come back in a short period. I want you to go get yourself a cup of coffee to keep yourself happy. In the meantime, Ed's going to go over to the stove and get him a brew, and we'll be back to talk to you more on the Internet Advisor. Boy, I tell you, today has been lively. We've been talking about a lot of great stuff. Television is been a big conversation we had in the last segment. And obviously with the fall season opening up for the new year, with wintertime coming, more people will be inside watching TV. I got to tell you that last night I started watching the Mandalorian series on Disney Plus. Oh man, that is so good. I looked at 2 episodes. I try not to do more than 1 episode a night, but I got excited and watched 2, and I shouldn't do that because I waste them. And, that way, I can't save them up for other times. Ed, this day in history, Microsoft?
Two things from Microsoft. And then we'll go to the Apple announcements from this week. But Microsoft introduces Windows. November 10th, 1983, Microsoft announced Windows, a graphical user interface to go on top of the MS-DOS environment. But in true Microsoft fashion, it does not actually ship until April 1984 with Windows 1.0. And then in November 1985 was when it was actually available. And then, of course, wow, Windows 1, 2, and 3 saw limited uses. And it wasn't until Windows 3.1 came out that they began to see widespread acceptance. And so that was in November 10th. And November 13th or November 12th, November 12th, year 2000, Microsoft declares tablets are the future. And boy, were they right. That tablets and iPads, it just wasn't a Microsoft tablet that took off, because Microsoft tried to basically adapt the Windows operating system and the graphical user interface, and not realizing that they needed to redesign the entire GUI, the graphical user interface. And that's what Apple did with the Icon app available. So yeah, I mean, Microsoft tried to reverse course when they released Windows 10 or Windows 8 and came up with an entire new GUI, but by that time it was too late, and and basically Apple is still king on the tablet environment.
Yeah, they say that one of the biggest, what's funny is that, yes, they did predict it. It was good. It wasn't going to take over the entire market. They were just 11 years too early to be able to actually get it done. That's when Apple finally came out with the iPad. The other thing was the concept that Microsoft was using. They were trying to take and make pen and paper work on a computer rather than do advanced forms and use things like your finger and that sort of thing to do it. So crazy. But speaking of Apple,
That's a
oh
good
my
point.
God, Apple, the past week, I got really excited because my wallet will probably hurt sometime in the near future. Apple came out with their own silicone chip now. So now Apple still uses Intel processors, and they'll continue to use them for another year or so. They'll continue to support them at least for another couple of years, but they made their own chip. And now they're building Macs, specifically MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros, and the Mac Mini are the three platforms that they announced this past week. And these devices are available now for shipping. If you order one, they'll be shipped this week, matter of fact. And the amazing thing with the MacBook Air, this chip runs so efficiently, they removed the fan from the PC. So it doesn't require a fan to keep it cool on the inside. And the other thing the other two really big things that it does that really got me excited is, number one, it's, well, actually three. One, the battery life is incredibly crazy. You can get 18 hours of battery life out of a MacBook Air now, using it in normal use. Number two, it's instant on pretty much once you boot it up. Just like your phone, your Apple iPhone, it's on all the time. So you open up the lid, you just start working right off the bat, just like you would do with your phone after you unlock it. And the third thing that got me really excited about that is all of the apps that you run on your phone, you can run on your Mac. I'm going to say that again. All of the apps that you run on your phone, you can run on your Mac. So if there's things on your phone that you've been used to doing, like, for example, games and that sort of thing, and you want to be able to play that same game on your Mac, you just download the same app from the App Store that you have authorization onto your Mac, and you can do the same thing on that as well.
There's so many nuances to that. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah. So when you think about the native.
Oh, put your mic
functionality-
down.
Reach higher.
Oh,
There you
you're
go.
right. Put my mic down. Now you can hear. There we go. I knew it was somewhere.
We're not flawless here.
So when you think about some of the native functionality on the phone, how are they going to do some of that on the Mac? Do we know yet, or do we have to wait for enough of them to ship for somebody to figure that out? So it's something like GPS. Is GPS really on a Mac, on a MacBook Air? That would be interesting. And some of the other native functionality, that would be cool if they could actually do that.
Yeah, I believe that some of it is there. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know it all yet, and I'm still trying to find out more information about it. But if the app can port over, it can pretty much do it. That's the other thing too. If you happen to have a Intel Mac and you go out and buy one of these new Macs with the M1 chip in it, and you decide can I run my same Intel applications on that Mac? Yes, you can. they have a application that they had with the previous Macs when we went from the PowerPC chip to the Intel chip. It was called Rosetta. Well, now they have Rosetta 2, which is the first time you load that program, it goes in and converts all the code over so it can run on the M1 chip. And then from that point forward, you can run those Intel-based programs on the M1 chip, and they'll still perform for you. There's been reports.
That answers it. Okay.
Yeah. There's been reports that the programs actually run better on the M1 chip than they do on the Intel chip once they get converted. So we'll see how strong that particular reporting comes out to be. The other thing that went with that is Microsoft has already started writing Microsoft Office native for the M1 chip. So they've let out on that, along with Adobe is doing Lightroom and a couple other applications for that. So a lot of the major players are starting to write for the M1 chip. It is, it's reported to be really, really efficient, really, really fast. We'll see how that works. Now, the one thing I did notice on this particular announcement is that all of the machines only go up to 16 gig of memory. So I don't think it's a ceiling for the M1 chip. I think they're just starting off slower and on a lower price point at this particular time. But 16 gigs seems to be the max amount of memory you can get in the machines at this particular time. The fun part is the MacBook Air is exactly the same price as the previous Intel version. The MacBook Pro comes in at roughly the same price, maybe about $100 more. But the Mac Mini starts off at $699, which is a couple $100 less than the Intel version. The other thing that goes along with the Mac Mini is this. They're still going to continue to sell the Intel version along with the new M1 version as well. Because if you look at the breakdown on some of the equipment that they put in it, there's reasons for staying on those, keeping those two platforms going. Mac Minis are selling really big in production environments. I've seen places where they had banks, like walls of Mac Minis running, doing all sorts of production things. So those are the reasons why they're keeping those running in that particular environment. But the price point is really weird when the brand new stuff is even less.
So you also, another Mac Apple announcement was the Big Sur.
Yeah, Big Sur is the new OS that has been announced. It's going from Catalina now to Big Sur. It was released publicly this week. You can download it, add it to your Mac. If you have a M1 Mac, it's going to take advantage for all the advantages that go with the M1 Mac, but it also runs on the Intel machine as well. So you can go ahead and download it on your Intel machine, get it running with that as well. Loads of features in that. The interface, when you look at it on Big Sur, looks surprisingly similar to what you see on the iPad and what you see on the iPhone. So there's a convergence going on this technology that's for sure that's going to happen, and it's coming. There's no stopping it. I can see it where you'll seamlessly flow your workflow, and you can kind of do it now, but it's going to be even more seamless from your phone to your pad to your Mac, from your Mac to your pad, from your pad to back to your Mac to your phone. It's going to be seamless.
Your ITV or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So if you're in the Apple ecosystem and you want to go with that type of situation, this is now going to be the time to do it. Let's start off slow and see how it works out, and hopefully things will stay the same. We won't have any problems with it.
Okay. Well, we got about a minute left, and this day, what was the, let's do it before we get Mike Brennan on here. This day in history.
Well, sticking with the Apple.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sticking with the Apple theme, this day in history, November 10th, 2001, Apple shipped its first iPod. And that was that real thick one that was about the size of a pack of cigarettes with that quarter size hard drive in it. Those began shipping this week, obviously just for Christmas. They wanted to get them sold. So that was a big thing back then.
What year was that?
2001.
Ah, okay.
All right, we'll be back with Mike Brennan and MI Tech News here on the Internet Advisor. Welcome back to MIT. So let me start that over again, please.
I know. I like that start. Go ahead.
All right, let's just keep. You know something? The heck with it. I'm gonna prove to us that we are just a normal podcast. We're just a bunch of guys having a darn good time. This is the Internet Advisor, signified by that picture behind me. But this is the segment of the broadcast when our resident reporter, Gary Baker, the guy who's a reader and advocator and reader and viewer of this particular website, talks with the gentleman I'm about to introduce now. And he is the man who knows everything about what's going on in and around the great state of Michigan. He's the man that when you need information on technology, go to his site and see him. He's the man in charge of mitechnews.com. And that is the one, the only Mike Brennan. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Cal. I always love your intros. I never know what you're going to say.
Neither do I, but you and Gary always know what you're going to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the show over to you two, and let's talk about what's been happening in MI Tech News. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, it's a great place to go when you want to get just technology news. But every once in a while, Mike, you sprinkle in some things that are not truly like internet technology or electronic technology. We're talking about COVID in the news and how the resurgence has happened, and Michigan is certainly seeing a lot of cases going up right now. But they're also trying to do something maybe a little more innovative, which is offering a tracing app free of charge, right?
Yeah, and it's called MI COVID Alert, and it was developed by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and they did it at that campus in Lansing, whose name we cannot use. Anyway, that college 45 miles away from where I'm at, a little farther for Gary. But yeah, it's available. You can go to your usual places, a Play Store or wherever you can get your apps from. It's there. And what it does is if you get COVID, then you let the app know, and then it would send out a alert to people who are around you recently that they may or may not have been exposed, and vice versa. So if someone else is that you're connected with in one way or another has had it, they send out that same alert, and then you would know that maybe you should get tested. This is one of the big things that was lacking that other countries are successfully doing better than we are right now is the whole idea of tracing. I mean, wearing masks is very important. That protects you 70-80%. But then when you do get it, you want to be able to, or when other people get it and they're around you, you want to know that, so that, because a lot of the times, I'm no expert on this, but we have an expert on our show every Monday, and you don't really show the symptoms of it even when you have it, and you can be spreading the virus, and clearly we don't want to do that.
Right. It's one thing to not take precautions and you get sick. It's another thing to make other people sick because you haven't taken precautions. So
right.
That's a good thing. A lot of people though are concerned about security. And what happens if how does the app trace who you come in contact with? And a lot of people don't like that big brother looking over their shoulder. So when I was thinking, okay, I better look for security and see if that's a component of this, I saw something that you also reported on, which was the way Duo, their report is now finding that the security landscape is changing.
Yeah, duos are one of our state unicorns, meaning that they're more than $1 billion in worth. Of course, they were acquired by Cisco, about a year ago, I guess, or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, they do two-factor authentication where, you send an alert to your phone. Well, a lot of these companies are not comfortable with the fact that these are usually text messages that are being sent to the phones. So they're moving away from that to the biometric scanning, where you put your thumbprint on the phone as a verification. Most modern smartphones, about 80% now, allow you to do that. I certainly have my Samsung Android phone allows me to do that. So they're moving more in that area. And of course, they're still using a much more use of virtual private networks and desktop protocols and things like that. But I mean, this whole trend moving, I mean, what and we're going to cover that here, I know, in the next story, but what companies are discovering is if they get a white collar workforce, it actually works out pretty well, and they can save money in the long run by having fewer people, fewer buildings to house people and things like that. But it all ties in together, and in this case, yeah, they're looking for, since everybody in the white collar workforce is going online to do whatever it is they do for the company, then they're seeing things change.
Right.
Mike, things are changing, and this remote workforce concept. I've worked with global companies where we've had people all over the world working on the technology for us. But now, a lot of other companies are doing that too. They call it talent without borders.
Yeah, well, the conference board just came out with a new survey, and they looked at a bunch of HR professionals, just about 300 of them they surveyed, and more than a third say they're willing to hire 100% of remote workers, not only in the U.S. but around the world. I mean, this is a golden opportunity for companies to bring in, like you say, Gary, talent from wherever the talent is, and the talent can mean resident wherever they are. And of course, you have the time zone adjustments you have to make, and a few things like that. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity for American companies that, because the H-1Bs, we've had a limit on how many folks we can bring in from around the world physically. Well, that's now eliminated. We can bring them in virtually, and I think it's going to be a big boon for American companies.
Yeah, one of the companies that I work with, I'm the CIO there for IPC, which is a global electronics association that's serving electronics manufacturing industry. Um, so we've had people all over the world for a long time. I just contracted with a company that's actually based in South Carolina, um, and they have a remote workforce. We are putting a couple people from their company on our team. Uh, the architect is in Israel. We've got somebody in the UK and somebody else in Brazil, and they're the best in the world that we can find, and they are all over the world.
Yeah, I'm hearing that more and more for company, and I get 500 emails a day, and a lot of them are the oh gosh, I'm going to get a delivery here in a second. Hang on. Can we pause this 1 second and I'll get back into this? I've got a
Well,
side.
no problem at all. We're going to let you go do what you have to do, Mike, because that's important at this particular time. But every week we have Mike Brennan on the Internet Advisor with mitechnews.com, and you can reach that information at his website. Also, we provide a link on the Internet Advisor website where you can get to Mike's site as well. Ed, I wanted to talk about what's going on with Google. They were giving us something free, but now all of a sudden, I think they're going to stop that. The bandwagon has come to an end, right? In regards to Google Photos.
The Google Photos. Yeah, Google Photos allowed you to back up your photos on your phone. So, one of the things, we all have smartphones, at least on Androids, and if you downloaded the Google Photos application, it automatically backed up, or you can enable the feature where it backed up to the Google Cloud, all your photos on your Android phone. So you didn't have to connect it to your PC. That was a great feature. Google's now going to be eliminating that next year in 2021. I think they said in June. So we're going to have to look for there's several other applications, and maybe on a future show, I'll tout what those are, that also provide the ability to back up your photos to as an example, your Google Drive.
Mhm.
And just
a lot of us have been relying on this.
Just to clarify that point for you, Ed, they're not going to stop the service. The service will be there. You just won't be able to do it for free.
Yeah. Well,
Right,
of course.
that's right. And when people say there's no such thing as a free lunch, that wasn't true. There were some free lunches out there, just not forever. And
It was a free
Google,
lunch, not a free smorgasbord.
yeah, well, and so Google's not allowing they're going to stop the free lunch, but it's still a pretty good lunch, and Google does a really good job. I happen to use iPhone, and I use a different backup service.
Well, I tell you, the time is absolutely flown today. We want to say thank you to Mike Brennan with MI Tech News. Thanks so much for being with us, Mike.
Oh, pleasure.
Okay, Gary, it was great to always have you from sunny Florida.
My
And of
pleasure.
course, Ed Rudel, my sidekick. Thank you so much for being there.
Always great. Thanks, Cal.
My name is Cal Carson. Make sure you go to internetadvisor.net. Check us out. The link to Mike's website is also there, internetadvisor.net, and look for MI Tech News. We'll talk to you next week here on the Internet Advisor. Have a great day.